Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
We're jumping into some really fascinating territory today. You've shared these, well, ancient Buddhist texts with us.
That's right, they're commentaries, specifically focusing on a verse from the Dhammapada.
Okay.
And, they tell this incredibly compelling story. At its heart, it's about a monk, a seemingly small amount of money, actually.
Just a small amount.
Relatively, yes. But it sparks this profound lesson about what truly satisfies us, about contentment.
Right. So our mission today is to really dig into these specific texts, follow that story, and pull out the practical wisdom they offer.
Yeah.
About wealth, desire.
And where real satisfaction comes from. And we're sticking only to the details found right here in these sources we have.
Got it. No outside speculation.
Exactly. It's a story that honestly feels quite relevant even now.
So where does it begin?
It starts with this monk. He'd been recently ordained, fairly new to the monastic life, and his teacher had sent him off to a particular place to continue his studies. Pretty standard path for a monk at that stage.
So he's setting into his practice, doing what monks do, but then, as you said, life happens.
Exactly. The sources tell us his father fell ill.
Ah.
And that's the turning point. The father apparently really wanted to see his son, the monk, desperately.
Understandable.
But he couldn't find anyone to, summon him.
Yeah.
To send a message.
Oh, that's tragic.
It is. And in those final moments, the father, just overwhelmed with grief because he couldn't see his son, he did something quite specific. He gave 100 cup hands, that's the currency, to his younger son.
Okay, 100 cup hands. Was there a reason?
Yes, a very clear instruction. The father said this money was specifically for the monk's expenses, his bowl, his robes, that kind of thing.
So intended to support his monastic life, not pull him out of it.
Precisely. That seems to be the intention. So then the younger brother has this task. He goes to find the monk.
Must have been a difficult meeting.
You can only imagine. The texts describe him falling at the monk's feet, weeping.
Wow.
Bringing the news, first, that their father had died, and died grieving for him, for the monk.
Heavy news to deliver.
And then he presents the father's final instruction, explains about the 100 kahapchas left for his expenses, and asks the monk, basically, what should I do with this?
Right, so the ball's in the monk's court. What's his initial reaction?
Well, initially, it's exactly what you might expect from someone committed to the monastic path. He says, straight up, I have no need for kahapas.
Rejects it.
Rejects it outright. Seems simple enough.
But the story doesn't end there, clearly.
No, because the sources say later. Something shifted. His mind started working on it.
The seed was planted.
That's exactly how it feels. This is where it gets psychologically really interesting, right? It shows how these external things, even rejected ones, can start to, fester.
So that small sum, that 100 kahapas, it started to look different to him.
Completely different. The text says he began thinking, questioning his whole way of life. What's the point of this? Going for alms every day, relying on other families.
He saw the money as an alternative.
Yes. He started thinking, maybe it is possible to live on that 100 kapakas. Maybe I should just leave the order.
Wow. From I have no need to maybe I'll leave. That's a quick turnaround.
It shows the power of that thought, doesn't it? Seeing the money not just as support within the life, but as a way out of it. That was the pivot point.
And what was the effect of this internal struggle? Did it just stay in his head?
Oh, no. The sources are very clear about the impact. He became afflicted by this state called unrejoicing. It sounds like a deep discontent, a loss of joy in his practice.
More than just a bad mood, then.
Much more. It directly hit his spiritual life. He neglected his study. He stopped meditating properly.
So it affected his actions, his discipline.
And even his physical health. The texts describe him becoming unwell, looking yellow, specifically like someone with jaundice. His inner turmoil was literally making him sick.
That's quite a description. So this wasn't subtle. People must have noticed.
Absolutely. The younger monks, the novices around him, they saw his condition. They saw something was seriously wrong.
And they asked him.
They did. They asked him, what's wrong? What is this? And when he admitted, I am discontented, they knew it was serious.
So they didn't just leave it at that.
No, they reported it up the chain, so to speak, to his teachers.
And the teachers.
They recognized this needed, a higher authority, a deeper wisdom, so they brought him to the Buddha himself.
Okay, so now the issue is front and center. Before the Buddha, how does that conversation go?
The Buddha, as often described, gets straight to the point. He asks the monk, is it true? Are you discontented?
And the monk confirms.
The monk says, yes, it's true. Then the Buddha asks the crucial question, why? Why are you discontent? Do you have some means of livelihood you're thinking about?
Probing the source of the discontent.
Exactly. And the monk's answer is immediate, linking it directly back to the inheritance. 100 kahapas. That's his answer. He believes this money is his potential security, his alternative path.
Okay. And this is where the Buddha's response gets really interesting, isn't it?
Mhm.
He doesn't just lecture him.
No, not at all. This is, I think, a brilliant part of the story. He offers this incredibly practical, tangible exercise. He says, okay, bring some stones first.
Stones.
Yeah, pebbles, stones. He says, by counting, you will know whether it's actually possible to live on that much money or not.
Grounding him in reality. Like, let's actually do the math here.
Precisely. It cuts through the mental fantasy, the abstract worrying. It forces a confrontation with the practicalities. So the monk brings the stones.
And the Buddha guides him.
Yes. He instructs him how to allocate these stones, representing the 100 kapas, for the expenses of a basic lay life, a kind of ancient budgeting exercise.
What kind of expenses?
Very basic stuff. Okay, set aside 50 stones for your food, for consumption, for now.
Half of it gone already.
Right. Then the things you'd need to actually work and survive. 24 stones for 2 oxen.
Essential for farming back then.
Absolutely. Then a certain amount for seeds, for a yoke and a plow, for a hoe, for a knife and an axe. Just the fundamental tools.
So as the monk is physically counting out these stones, allocating them.
The reality hits him. As he counts it all out, the 100 kapanas, represented by this pile of stones, just aren't enough. They're insufficient.
Even for a really basic subsistence level lay life.
Exactly. That dream of just living off the inheritance, it evaporates when faced with the actual costs. His perceived financial safety net was, well, an illusion.
That must have been quite a moment for the monk, seeing it laid out so clearly.
You'd think so, a very stark realization. But the Buddha, being the Buddha, doesn't stop there. He doesn't just show the money isn't practically enough.
He connects it to something deeper.
Exactly. He uses this moment to explain the meaning of that phrase from the Dhammapada verse. Not by a rain of kapanas.
Connecting the monk situation back to the original teaching.
Yes. And he clarifies that this isn't just, a metaphor for a lot of money. The sources say this phrase actually referenced a specific legendary event.
What kind of event?
An event where someone, through their merit or power, was able to cause a literal rain of 7 kinds of jewels to fall from the sky.
7 kinds of jewels, like
Right.
actual gems.
Rubies, diamonds, pearls, the works. Falling like rain, waist high, over a huge area 12 yojanas wide.
How big is 12 yojanas?
It's a vast distance, maybe hundreds of square miles in modern terms. Imagine an area that large buried waist deep in precious gems.
That's wealth beyond comprehension. Forget 100 kafanas.
Exactly. Staggering, unimaginable wealth. And the Buddha's point is profound. Even that kind of wealth, this cosmic jackpot, cannot satisfy craving.
Craving for what specifically?
Craving for sense objects, for defiling sense pleasures, that fundamental thirst of the mind. This craving, he says, using a specific term from the text, dupua, is incredibly difficult to fill, like a bottomless pit.
So even a literal rain of jewels isn't enough to fill it.
That's the teaching. And to hammer this point home, to show just how insatiable this craving is, he recounts the story of Mantatu.
Mantatu. Who was he?
Mantatu is presented in the text as the absolute pinnacle of worldly success and attainment, a legendary king who became a world-ruling monarch, a Kakavati.
Okay, ruler of the whole world.
And more. He apparently possessed such incredible power, such merit, that he could actually cause that rain of 7 kinds of jewels himself just by clapping his hands.
So he had infinite wealth on demand.
Infinite wealth and immense power. The sources say he even went on to rule as king of the gods, displacing Saka for an incredibly long time, like 36 reigns of the actual king of the gods.
Ruling in heaven.
Ruling in the heavens. His dominion supposedly extended as far as the sun and moon revolved and shone. All beings on earth were his slaves.
Okay, so we're talking wealth, power, cosmic dominion, longevity, beyond anything we can really grasp.
Absolutely beyond. The ultimate worldly fantasy fulfilled, you could say.
So surely he must have been satisfied.
That's the twist. The story's conclusion is stark. Even after all that, after ruling vast earthly and heavenly realms for literally eons, Mandatu died.
Yes.
Without satisfying his craving. All that attainment, all that power, all that pleasure, it still wasn't enough to quell that inner wanting, that fundamental thirst for more.
Wow. That's a powerful illustration of difficult to fill.
Isn't it? It really puts the monk's 100 Kahaplyan into perspective. If ruling the cosmos isn't enough, what chance does a small inheritance have?
Exactly. So this leads directly into the core verses the Buddha spoke then,
Right.
summarizing this whole teaching.
Precisely. He delivers these two verses that crystallize the lesson from the monk's struggle, the pebble exercise, and the Mandatu story.
What's the first verse?
The first one cuts right to it. Not by a rain of papachas is there satisfaction in sense pleasures, referencing Mandatu and the jewel rain. Then it continues. Sense pleasures have little satisfaction and are dukkha.
Little satisfaction and dukkha. What do the commentaries say about those terms here?
They explain little satisfaction, or asada, is the Pali term often used, means the happiness they provide is fleeting, transient, like happiness in a dream. It's not solid, not lasting.
Okay, so temporary enjoyment and dukkha.
Dukkha here is translated often as suffering, stress, unsatisfactoriness. The commentary links it to the inherent pain or stressfulness tied up with sensual experiences, especially when we cling to them. It connects to broader Buddhist concepts about the aggregates of clinging being stressful.
So it's not just that worldly pleasures aren't enough satisfaction. The text is saying they are actually fundamentally a source of stress or pain in themselves.
That's the deeper insight, yes. The pleasure is temporary, and the whole dynamic is bound up with dukkha.
And the second verse.
The second verse builds on the Mandatu example, thus knowing the wise person does not find delight even in divine sense pleasures.
Even the pleasures of the heavens.
Exactly. Someone who truly understands this unsatisfying, stressful nature of sense pleasures, even the most refined, sublime, heavenly ones that Mandatu experienced, won't find ultimate, lasting delight there either.
They see through it.
They see its limitations. The sources even mention another story briefly about the venerable Samiti being tempted by gods offering divine pleasures, but a wise person, like this monk hopefully became, wouldn't be truly captivated even by that level.
So if worldly wealth isn't the answer, and even divine pleasures aren't the ultimate answer, what is? Where does real satisfaction lie, according to these verses?
The verses offer the clear alternative, the contrast. The disciple of the perfectly enlightened one delights in the ending of craving.
The ending of craving itself.
That's where the true delight is found. Here, disciple means someone actively practicing the path taught by the Buddha. The commentary notes it's a bhikkhu who practices, perhaps born from listening to the Dhamma. True, stable, unwavering satisfaction comes not from chasing and acquiring more sense objects or experiences,
But from letting go.
from letting go of the very root of the dissatisfaction, the craving itself, progressing towards and ultimately experiencing the state where that craving has ceased. That's the path to arhatship, to nirvana. That's the source of real delight.
It's a complete paradigm shift, isn't it? Satisfaction isn't about getting more. It's about wanting less, fundamentally. About extinguishing the fire of wanting.
That's a great way to put it. The real deep dive these sources invite us into is understanding that relentless dynamic of craving within ourselves.
And what happened to the monk? The one whose discontent started this whole thing. Did the teaching land?
It certainly seems so. The sources state quite clearly that at the end of this discourse, the monk attained the fruit of stream entry. So tapis.
Dream entry, that's the first stage of enlightenment in Buddhism, right?
Yeah.
A major breakthrough.
A huge breakthrough. It means he gained direct, irreversible insight into the nature of reality, saw the truth of the teaching for himself, and was now firmly on the path to final liberation. His discontent was transformed into profound understanding.
So a direct positive outcome for him.
Absolutely. And the text adds a final note. The discourse wasn't just beneficial for him, it benefited the whole assembled audience as well.
Showing the universal relevance of the message.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We've followed this ancient story, triggered by what seems like a fairly small amount of money, 100 katapaintas,
Yeah.
but enough to almost derail a monk's entire spiritual life.
And through his struggle, through the Buddha's very practical pebble exercise, and through the epic myth of Mandatu and the rain of jewels.
We get this powerful illustration of the human condition, really. The constant struggle with craving, with desire.
And the core message seems to be that trying to satisfy that craving with external things, whether it's modest inheritance or ruling the cosmos, is ultimately futile. It just doesn't work. It can't bring lasting satisfaction because the nature of craving itself is insatiable.
The real deep dive these sources offer, then, isn't just into ancient currency or mythical kings, but into the nature of our own minds, into craving itself.
Exactly. And the radical alternative presented is that true, stable satisfaction, real delight, comes from a completely different direction. Not from feeding the craving, but from understanding it and working towards its cessation, letting it go.
That brings us to a final thought for you, the listener. Consider the things in your own life that you pursue, the things you believe will bring you that lasting satisfaction or security. Maybe it's a career goal, a particular purchase or relationship, an experience you're chasing.
How does the principle we saw today, the practical insufficiency shown by the pebbles, the ultimate insufficiency shown by Mandatu's story, apply to those desires? Ask yourself, are those things truly capable of providing the deep, stable fulfillment you're seeking?
Or are they perhaps like the 100 kapans or even the rain of jewels in the heavenly realms, simply insufficient when measured against the sheer persistence and depth of craving itself? If that's the case, what is it then that could lead to a deeper, more unwavering delight in your own life? Something to think about.